everybody, Nick here, and I got a review for you today of an unusual knife from the Spyderco Knife Company, and that's your Spyderco Yojimbo 2, or Yo 2 as I'm going to call it here. This is a follow-up to the Yojimbo 1, which came out a long time ago, and wasn't a huge seller because it had some, issues, and it's been redesigned since. But this is designed by Michael Janich, who is a pretty well-known knife self-defense stabbing people instructor. And is, produced in collaboration with Spyderco. And this is really designed for self-defense. And so I'm going to go ahead. I'm not a self-defense guy. I'm not a ninja. I'm not anything like that. And so I'm going to go ahead. If this is the point right here, this is Nick. I'm going to go right ahead and miss the point. And I'm going to talk about the Spyderco Yojimbo 2 primarily, in fact, exclusively as an everyday carry sort of utility pocket knife, and let the mall ninjas stick to their self-defense. But yeah, it's still an interesting knife, even in that way, and it's actually a knife I've been interested in for a long time, because I do tend to like strange blade shapes and Warncliffe-style blades, like your Graham Razel here. And so, and I love the compression lock. There's a lot of good going on here. So let's just jump into that, and before I go any further, I'd like to just thank my wonderful viewer who sent this in, who wants to go only by the name Batman. So thank you, Batman, very much for sending me a Spyderco Yo 2. Huh, even looks like a batarang. Cool. Moving on. Let's go on into the good, the bad, and the ugly, as always. Okay, first, the good. The size is great. It's not a huge knife. It's a little bit bigger in the pocket than your Delica, but it rides nicely, and the blade is about 3 inches exactly here, which makes it legal in a lot of places, which is a wonderful thing. It's almost a little long, actually, but we'll go there. The blade shape is a Warncliffe, and you all know that I do enjoy Warncliffe blades. This is a Razel, but nonetheless for office kind of EDC, because they're very good for envelopes, they're very good for poking just the tip into a box, for opening clamshell packaging. I mean, they've got a whole lot of good going on for them, and this is a good Warncliffe, and for this reason I've actually looked at the Yo 2 a couple of times for my own personal collection. And so, that's a nice thing. One of the best things on this is the action. It's a compression lock knife, so that means it's got this little deal up here that pops over and locks itself up in the top here. That makes for a very, very solid lockup. This ain't going anywhere. And it also makes for a nice ability to open and close the knife without your fingers ever being in the blade path, which I appreciate. Pardon me. In addition, the detent is really great. It's well done for flicking open with your thumb, and even it's well done that you can do it with your middle finger, which is not something I generally do on a Spyderco, but it works really well here because they've got that detent just dialed in. So this is really nicely done there. The ergonomics are good. They're not perfect, but, even by Spyderco standards, they're pretty good. And it's actually good in 3 grips. It's good in this more conventional grip. It's good in a choked-up sort of grip where you use this flat surface as a finger choil for more detailed kind of cutting. And it's also good in its intended grip for self-defense, which is your ice pick grip here, where it goes around the corner. And, my small hands are hurting me a little bit more than usual here. But nonetheless, if this is a grip you would ever use, this is well designed for it. So, I gotta give them credit, even if that's not my shtick, for designing a knife that can be held comfortably in 3 different ways. Nice thing. Generic 4-way clip, so it can go here, 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 or here, which gives you lots of options on how you want to carry it. And it's also a generic clip, so you can do an aftermarket deep carry clip. But actually, you don't really need to deep carry on this, and I'll talk about that in a little while here. Fit and finish on the whole is very good. The lock is smooth. It's running on washers, not bearings, but that's okay. And the chamfering on it is very nice, both in the Spidey hole and around the rest of the knife. All the parts that don't need to be sharp are not sharp, and that's one of the things that the Golden Colorado USA Earth Factory, because this is one of the made in the USA Spideys, which is funny because it's got a Japanese name, just saying. Anyways, that's one of the things they tend to do really well, which is beautiful. It's an interesting knife. It's unique. There is nothing else that looks like your Spyderco Yojimbo or Yo 2, for that matter. It's got a nice partial symmetry, looks like a batarang if you're a mall ninja and want to carry a knife like that. And, it's actually surprisingly decent at deep cuts. So I did... One of the things I try with every knife that comes across my table for review that I can do this with is I try and use it in some kind of food preparation. And so I don't remember exactly what I think I cut up a cucumber or something for a salad. And, it's a very thick knife, so it's not a killer slicer. Oh, that's a bad phrasing. But anyways, it can go all the way down to the basically it can make a complete cut because there's no flipper tab here. This bottom part is basically flat, so if you're holding it in this kind of a grip, you can get all the way down and make good cuts with it. So that's kind of a nice thing. S30V steel is good to go, and the most interesting thing for me on this knife is the way that it actually guides the hand into the pocket. So one problem that a lot of really thick knives have is that it makes it hard to get into your pocket. If this is your pocket here, sooner or later, you're going to need to reach past your knife and get out your wallet or your cell phone or your keys or so whatever the heck it is you carry in the pocket with your knife. And with some knives, it's really a pain in the neck because they're wide and thick and you really don't have a whole lot of space. The beautiful thing about the Yo2 here is that it actually guides your hand in because you hit this kind of rampy surface and it pushes, so it's very, very easy to get into the rest of your pocket, pardon me, with your Yo2 in there, which makes this knife not actually bad to carry in the least. It's a little wide, but the wide part's at the bottom, and at the top you've got this nice ramp to let your hand get in there. And so that was, I don't know if that was a design consideration explicitly, or it just happened to fall out of the ergos, but it was really well done here. And I like that, and that's not something you see very often. Very often you get very squared off kind of knives at the very top of your pocket, and that makes for a slightly less pleasant experience, or maybe a considerably less so. So there's your good. It's got a 3-inch blade in a good shape. The action is great. The fit and finish is great. The ergonomics are very good. And, you know, it is actually capable of doing some EDC kinds of things. So there you go. Let's jump on in now to your bad. Okay, couple of nitpicks, couple of real deals. Nitpick, Golden, Colorado, USA Earth doesn't actually follow the curve of the knife. Golden needs to be shifted down in just a little tiny bit, and then they'd be golden. Yeah, pun intended. But, yeah, that was just a little nit thing to me. And also, the compression lock is kind of pinchy. If you open the knife with your finger right here, which is not uncommon, with your thumb stud, when it pops open, it's going to grab your finger right about there. And, you know, maybe that's just my fingers, but, you know, I feel like if they just changed the geometry a little bit here, that wouldn't have been an issue. Whatever, not a big deal. It's got really thick blade stock, and that is a bigger deal. I mean, take a look at this. This blade is thicker than your Graham Razel, or just barely the same. I'm not even sure which. And it's definitely the same thickness as your PM2. And, you know, that's okay. It means it's going to be durable, but it makes it way too thick for slicing effectively. Like I said, I did some cucumbers and I did some broccoli, and you can do it, but it doesn't want to do it. And particularly because they've got a hollow grind on here. And generally I like a hollow grind, but this fairly shallow hollow grind makes it a less compelling slicer than had they done a full flat grind like they have on your PM2 here, where the entire blade is one consistent angle going up towards the thickness of the stock. And, you know, there may be some ninja self-defense reason for this. It's better at venting entrails or some ridiculous small ninja thing. But, you know, for an actual EDC knife use, I really wish this were a full flat grind. It would be a much more capable slicer for actually, you know, cutting things with that kind of thing. Also, the tip here is a little bit fragile because, I mean, look at it. It's just barely hanging out there. And it's also, the blade is just a little too long, in my estimation. Every time I use this knife, I kind of wish that the blade tip ended right here. And it was closer to your Spyderco Dodo in that kind of blade length. I'm sure there's some tactical or strategic reason for doing that, and whatever. But it's just a little bit long, and particularly with this length, it's very easy as you're cutting through something to drag the tip through and into whatever surface you're cutting on. So unless you're not a big fan of your, you know, Apple or your desk at work, you're probably going to want to cut on a cutting board or something like that next time you cut up an apple. Something to keep in mind, but that's also a problem with a lot of Wharncliffe blades. There is no sharpening choil on this knife, which I'm not a huge fan of. And then finally, the S30V on this knife runs kind of chippy. That's an issue that S30V has in general, but the edge of this knife is very, very thin. And when I got this knife from Batman, there was actually a pretty sizable chip in the blade up here. And, you know, I had to sharpen that out. Well, I agreed to sharpen that out because he lent me a knife, and I want to be nice to Batman because, you know, someday, who knows. But anyways, this one was actually already chipped, and that's just a concern. When you've got a knife this thick in a steel like S30V, you may run into that issue. I'm sorry, this thin. But anyways, so there's your bad. It's got a couple of nitpicks, but the blade stock is really super thick. It doesn't have a full flat grind. The tip seems fragile and a little long, and it's just a little bit chippy. for your everyday use as that. So let's go on into your ugly now. Okay, two ugly things here. First and foremost, this is a knife that's marketed for self-defense, but the majority of people who are going to buy this have no idea how to defend themselves with a knife, and that includes me, by the way. No freaking clue. Unless you've taken years of Cali or Eskrima or professional knife fighting training or your Michael Janich or Arnie Emerson or something like that, this is a knife where if you're buying it for self-defense, you're probably going to hurt yourself as much as you're going to hurt the other guy. And, you know, I'm not a big fan of self-defense with a knife, just in general. That's another rant for another day. But you just got to keep that in mind. Next time you're buying this thinking, oh, I'm going to be super prepared if I'm attacked in an alley by ninjas. You're probably not unless you got a whole bunch of years of training, in which case you'd probably have stronger opinions than what some random jackass on YouTube tells you about what you want to carry. And with that said, it's also not the most practical blade ever for doing things other than disemboweling people. For, you know, opening envelopes or boxes or cutting open apples or preparing a salad. The things that most, you know, people do with their knives on an everyday basis. This is a knife that I suspect, I don't actually quite know, but I suspect is pretty well designed for self-defense, but it's not as well designed for EDC. So, you know, that's kind of the ugly thing, is you're paying the price here to have all of the self-defense features in that you're getting a slightly less capable EDC kind of holder. So there's your ugly. Let's move on to your final verdict here. The O2 is almost a little bit hard for me to evaluate because, you know, I'm fundamentally missing the point. This is a knife that was built by a self-defense instructor to do self-defense stuff. And that's so not my bag. I got no part of that. So all I can do is talk about this as an EDC knife, and it's not bad in that sense. I mean, it's got a good blade shape, it's got good blade steel, the action's good, the ergonomics are good. There's nothing really super wrong with the knife, but there are some compromises made in the name of weaponness. The thickness of the blade, this particular grind, the length of the blade even, all make this slightly less than ideal, actually I would say fairly less than ideal for EDC use. But it's not completely impractical, and that's more than can be said for a whole bunch of self-defense knives, your Picals, your Karumbits, things like that. You can actually use this in an office setting, although it may be a little scary for a lot of people. But you can use this for making dinner. You can use this for opening envelopes, for cutting tapes, for popping open clamshell packages. No problem. And you can use it convincingly, you know, as a non-weapon. So I guess my final conclusion here is that if you're actually trained to use a knife in self-defense, you've done your Eskrima, your Cali, or whatever the heck else, your, top secret ninja training, then go ahead and pick up a Yo2, because this is a knife that I gather is a good weapon, and is also, I can vouch for the fact that it's a decent EDC choice. It's a knife that you can carry to stab people with, if that's your scene, and also to stab broccoli with for making dinner, or opening envelopes, or things like that. So that's nice. But if you're not really trained for the self-defense thing, or if you're in a place where, and I hope you're all in a place where you don't need to fear for your life on a daily basis, you're probably better off finding another EDC choice that doesn't have some of the weapon compromises. That's just kind of my thing. So, yeah, if you're already a ninja, go ahead and pick up a Yo2. It's a gem for you. For the rest of us who are not ninjas, I kind of recommend that you look at some other EDC choices, and if any trouble brews, just run the hell away, like the rest of us do. I hope this has been helpful to you, and thank you very much, Batman, for loaning me your knife, and have yourselves a wonderful rest of your day.